The greatest to ever do it is done doing it. This is maybe the most significant coaching retirement in many of our lifetimes, potentially ever in the history of college football. And it not only means a lot for Alabama fans, it means a lot for Georgia fans. And we're going to talk all about it today on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, fantastic app. More on them in a second. But the news today is very simple. It's very straightforward. It's hit you in the mouth big to Nick Saban. And again, hear this podcast's official stance because it's everybody's. There's no debating this.
There's not.
He's the greatest.
And we've said it over and over again on this podcast.
He's the greatest college football coach ever. That's of all time. Period. Not even.
It's not debatable in any way, shape, or form.
Correct. So Nick Saban retires. We're going to talk about what that means immediately, what dominoes may fall because some things about
you thought Jim Harbaugh leaving to go to the NFL was going to be a big, massive domino. Nick Saban said, hold that thought.
We're talking about the weight and magnitude of this, and I think that's where we're going to start as it pertains just to college football landscape. What if I were to tell you that in a matter of a week,
yeah, sure,
every single thing that you grew up knowing about college football, Daniel, is now and forever totally changed?
Fascinating.
1 week.
It's not. You wonder how much the change in, obviously NIL's been going on, transfer portal's been going on. The timing seems interesting with a 12-team playoff starting next year. You know, is that related to Nick Saban's decision? Is that something that's factored in? We'll probably never really know. I'm sure he will give a press conference and discuss all of these things. None of that has happened yet. We'll never really know kind of what fully led into that decision. But yes, college football has changed. But make no bones about it. The two things are going to be true, okay? And
at the same time
as they often are. One, Alabama's still going to be good. They're going to hire somebody good. They're going to recruit good players. They're going to spend a lot of money, and they're going to be really good at football moving forward.
It's Alabama.
That's going to happen, okay? Second thing, they'll never be this good again.
No,
there won't ever be another Nick Saban. There won't ever be another. And you know, you could argue about whether the last few years Nick Saban is even Nick Saban, but he's at least good enough to beat Georgia this year. He's at least good enough to make the college football playoff. And so from a Georgia fan's perspective, he certainly was plenty good still, Nick Saban. We famously doubted him many times, and he, punched us in the mouth many times. But Alabama's not done.
No. But
Alabama's not Alabama anymore. And that's what I think you have to come to terms with as just a fan of college football.
If you've seen any massive building or massive construction, massive wall, it just takes a couple of cracks in those well-built, well-established things just to start coming down. Now, you can rebuild it and it could be strong and you can have portions of it not great. There was a couple of already cracks that were happening in the Great Wall of Alabama.
Sure.
There is no crack bigger than this. It cannot come back from this as it was before. It's nearly impossible, because what you're saying is coaching in college football is harder, more time, more energy, more effort. Everything about it is doubly as hard. And if Nick Saban was great when it wasn't doubly as hard, and we saw him come down a little bit, that was starting the fissures, the cracks in the wall
Sure.
were there. You're telling me that you can find a coach better than Nick Saban to do it in a more difficult environment than he did it in? It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. There's never been a coach that combined recruiting and development and on-field coaching and motivation the way that Nick Saban has. Kirby Smart is the closest thing to it. You know that, and I know that as Georgia fans.
Correct.
But you're not going to replace it if you're Alabama. So I don't care who you go hire. And we'll talk about some names maybe in the next segment. I don't care who you go hire. Alabama, again, hear me say, isn't done.
No.
But this Alabama is finished. It's over. Like this, it's over. It's a new era of Alabama football.
It's now, instead of saying Alabama's going to be into the semifinals of the playoff, just pencil them in, because that's what Alabama has been. Just pencil them in, just playoff now. It's now, well, they're in the playoff. Let's see what happens, which is a brand new shirt to wear for the Crimson Tide.
We shouldn't just act like the 90s didn't exist, right? Like, we shouldn't just act like that there wasn't decades of Alabama mediocrity out there, right? Like, it was really average.
Yeah.
For a while. Like,
for a hot minute.
You remember, right? Oh, no, Alabama fans don't remember because they literally weren't Alabama fans back then. They've only lived through Nick Saban. And so going to be a bit of a rude awakening when you come back to reality here. But maybe not as big of a rude awakening as when you go out on that coaching search, Clint. And so let's talk about some names, and we'll do that right after we get into these.
The name that you need to know about getting tickets for your last-minute event is Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, gametime.co. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Dan and I love Game Time. They are fast, they are convenient, they go straight to your phone. It's secure. You don't have to mess around with fees and the cost. Just save yourself some time. We've done the stupid thing. We went and we had all the algorithm matrices out there with all the websites trying to find the best, lowest price ticket. And it turns out it's Game Time. Don't be us. Be better than us.
Be better than us.
Straight to Game Time. Game Time right now. Last minute tickets on concerts, NFL games, college football games, college basketball games. Hello. That's, yes, you dog fan. Get used to that being a common occurrence.
Needs to happen for you.
Needs to happen. Right now, download the app and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your order. Game Time, the best, most trusted, most reliable source for same-game tickets that you can find. Game Time. Okay, you said coaching search. Daniel, this is...
Were we respectful enough in the first segment, Clint? I really felt like we turned it on.
We did our best. I cheersed him. We said, good on all of you.
We
Congratulations.
Stated the facts about he was the greatest of all time. We said Alabama's not going to fall into the toilet and go to become a mediocre football team. I felt like we really did a nice job. And
many of our fans don't recognize that first segment. They had no clue who those two guys were.
But you know what, Blake, if you're out there listening, that was for you. That first segment was for you. Maybe turn off the pod now.
Turn off the pod, Blake.
Can we start here? There are going to be some Georgia fans who are going to feel some anxiety about whether or not the possibility could exist of your Kirby Smart forsaking Athens, Georgia, and heading to Tuscaloosa, where he got his big break in coaching.
Sure.
To coach the Alabama Crimson Tide and be the successor of his mentor and his hero, Nick Saban.
Okay, and on that statement, when Alabama fans talk about that, they will use the phrase "coming back home." That's the phrase they will use.
Right.
Okay.
Here's the thing about that.
Okay.
It's hilarious because it's so stupidly, naively, idiotically optimistic on the part of Alabama fans that Kirby Smart would even give you the time of day. That B,
well, I think he would answer a phone call, Daniel, just to catch up.
That he would consider a place where he coached for a decade his home rather than the place where he has now played or coached for 15 years?
See, this is interesting.
And none of that is the reason why Kirby Smart would never leave Georgia to take Alabama.
Let's talk about this.
You to listen closely here.
Alabama, if you're still here, Bama fan, buckle up.
Georgia is by far a better job than Alabama.
See,
it's so much better of a job. See, when you think about the Alabama job, Alabama fan, I think you're thinking about Nick Saban still being there, but he ain't. He gone.
Nick Saban had his dream job. It was great for Nick to come into Alabama when he did. It was fantastic.
He didn't even have his dream job. He made it into his dream job because he was awesome. Okay? And if Nick Saban had retired 7 years ago, then when he should have, then Alabama would be a way better job than Georgia. But see, what Kirby Smart's done in the last 7 years is he's taken Georgia and he's turned them into exactly what Georgia should be and exactly what Alabama was, emphasis on the word was, up until about 3 hours ago, which is the easiest place in the country to recruit and a perennial threat to play for championships every year with virtually unlimited money at your disposal. That's the job that Kirby Smart currently has. Now, I'm not saying Alabama's a bad job.
No.
But objectively speaking, there is no way you could convince me that coaching Alabama and living in Tuscaloosa is a better situation than coaching the Georgia Bulldogs, who have won 2 championships since the last time Alabama played for a championship. Georgia's won 2 of them.
Segment 1 is over. There's
no way you could convince me that Kirby Smart ain't leaving Georgia for anywhere. But if he did, it wouldn't be you.
I mean, just answer me this, and truthfully and honestly, if you were to just pros cons list, compare and contrast the job that Kirby Smart has right now to the job at Alabama, every single pro to leave and go to Alabama is superseded by the pro already at Georgia. Facilities, sure, great, have them. Pay, yep, he has that, and he will soon become the highest paid head football coach in college football. Okay. What about recruits and a home base and a city and an environment and a fan base? Check. Oh, except he doesn't have to mess with all you crazy Alabama fans that have conspiracy theory tinfoil hat wearing stuff. Okay. Check all that. There's nothing that Alabama has that's better than Georgia. And the one thing you say, well, it's the tradition. The tradition was Nick Saban.
There's 2 coaches that have ever coached at Alabama. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's the tradition.
They're both long gone.
Okay.
Neither of them walking through that door anymore.
So all the pros are better at Georgia. The cons are you're never going to live up to Nick Saban no matter what you do.
Sure.
Ever. You have to live in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, interesting.
Athens, is that a good city to be in at your beloved place where you have an AD that's
Alabama
completely
fans,
behind you?
It's hilarious to me that you want Kirby Smart to be your coach.
Well, I mean, I understand it.
But I understand he's the best coach in college football currently.
He is, hands down.
Hey, no one argues with that at all.
Well,
surely there's not a Michigan man out there willing to argue me. Surely there's not, right?
You haven't met a Michigan fan. Trust me, Daniel, living in the Midwest, there are an army of them wanting to fight you.
Kirby Smart would never. I have zero fear that Kirby Smart would even consider going to the University.
You can even bring up a yacht, take him on a cruise.
Call him. Go ahead and give him a ring-a-ding.
Go ahead,
give him a call. We're going to talk about in the third segment.
Dominoes be falling.
Some list of names, some dominoes. But before we get to it, Clint, let's get to the other big name that Georgia fans are going to sweat about. And that is Glenn Schumann. Clint, is Glenn Schumann going to be the next coach of Alabama?
Nope.
Be honest with the people.
Nope.
But tell him honestly, because but he might be though, right?
The only thing that you will want to do, Alabama is going to think this. This is the only thinking that makes Glenn Schumann make sense, but it's not at all makes any sense. Okay. The only sense that you're going to say is, well, it's Kirby Smart 2.0. Kirby came from Alabama coaching tree right into Georgia. No head coaching experience, defensive coordinator, learned, did his thing, and struck gold, and now he's the best. So we're going to do that with Glenn. We're going to go to a rival. We're going to go to Georgia. We're going to bring Glenn over. He's never been a head coach, no head coaching experience, and he's going to hit and go. Okay, there's a lot of problems with this, first and foremost.
Yeah.
One, Glenn Schumann is far younger than Kirby and far less experienced than Kirby
that's interesting.
was.
So it's not Kirby 2.0 almost.
It's not Kirby 2.0.
No, that's interesting. Okay.
Two. How many years has Glenn Schumann been the DC over at Georgia, Daniel?
3.
Okay. That's the same as Kirby had, right?
No.
It's not. It's not. It's not going to be Glenn because Alabama cannot. If it's Glenn Schumann, he is a sacrificial lamb for 2 years to be beat up, chewed out, spit out so that it can go get somebody else. That's what he would be. And he knows that.
I hope I can communicate this in a way that expresses how I feel about it. With no disrespect to Glenn Schumann whatsoever.
He's a great coach.
It would be a laughable hire if Alabama hired Glenn Schumann. Like, do you know who hires Glenn Schumann? Oregon. Oregon comes and hires the Georgia defensive coordinator. Do you know who hires Glenn Schumann?
Who's that?
Georgia 8 years ago. And Georgia fans, cover your ears. 8 years ago, Georgia hadn't won anything in 1 billion years. If you are Alabama and you claim to have 58 national championships or whatever the number is that you're claiming, and you claim to be the standard of college football and want to just continue this Nick Saban trajectory, which is what Alabama fans are going to tell you is going to happen, by the way, that it is just going to just rip roaring straight into the future, not altered one bit. If that's what you want and you're going to come in and hire a young, inexperienced, never head coach defensive coordinator, like that ain't what a blue blood program does. If Kirby Smart leaves and goes to the NFL, which he's not going to do, Georgia's not going to go hire some defensive coordinator who's never coached college football again, like, because that's not who we're trying to be
anymore.
It's not who we're trying to be anymore.
Play the mental gymnastics. Kirby Smart goes to the NFL, hiring magazine. Does Georgia promote Glenn Schumann to head coach? No.
There are a group of the fan base who think that we should or that we would. No way.
We would.
Georgia promotes Glenn Schumann.
And if we did, this podcast would be in a 5-alarm tizzy.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of people watching just for the content. Because all due respect to Glenn Schumann, he's going to get a head coaching job. And it's going to be at a school, not Oregon.
Nope.
Because, whatever. Well, it might be Oregon.
Dominoes.
He's going to get a head coaching job at a school like that's trying to get to a level. If you're Alabama and you hire Glenn Schumann, you are admitting, oops, we fell way down here. And now we're trying to scratch and claw our way back.
Was coaching in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Okay. One of these things is not like the other. Okay. Just like you want to get up there. And when you do, you have to take a chance on a coach. Okay.
Yeah.
When you're there, you don't take chances. You go for guarantees. You don't want Starbucks CEO to be the regional manager in the Western District and to leapfrog up to CEO. You go into the boardroom, or you go to another top 5 company CEO, and you lure them away.
All right. So who are the names that might be on Alabama's radar? What will it mean for Georgia? We'll talk about a few right after this.
This is, in fact, FanDuel. FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more. NFL regular season is wrapping up. There's still time to get on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets.
Love that.
Guaranteed. All you got to do is put $5 on a bet. You get $150 in bonus bets. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. App is super easy to use. Many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, bets in the new Explore tab, and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and plenty more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
I like the unpopular parlays myself. I like to go off the beaten path.
That's where you find the value.
That's where you find the value. Speaking of finding the value,
here we go. Look, look at what we do. We just tossing it back and forth.
I'm going to give 2 names, and I'm going to give you these 2 names or the field. That's every other human being in America. Okay?
Sure.
Dan Lanning and Lane Kiffin or the field.
Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin. It's the only 2 names that I would go with right now. Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin, and no one else.
I agree with you. I think it's one of these 2 names. I think you're going to hear so many names over the next few days and hours.
Yep. You're going to hear Jim Harbaugh.
Do you know why? People love content. They love to gather that content. So you're going to hear a lot of names. These are the names, I think. So you're either going to hire Lane Kiffin, who has head coaching experience.
He does.
Pretty successful head coaching experience for the places he's been.
I was just going to say, call it successful. I don't have to put an asterisk. I can call Lane Kiffin a successful head coach.
Absolutely. He does something very well, and that is call plays and design offense.
Yes.
And he has worked under Nick Saban. Now, I certainly would not call him a Saban disciple.
No.
But he has worked under Nick Saban.
And he knows the stress of that office.
He does.
And
he's seen it.
Very
He's
well.
been there.
Yeah.
He is the anti-Nick Saban, though. Like, that's what Alabama fans are going to have to really wrestle with.
Does Lane keep it under wraps? And does Lane like to limit his word choices and really get direct and angry and ornery towards... no, he likes to get the popcorn out.
It would be hilarious. And I honestly think it's the best hire for Alabama. I really genuinely mean that. If I were an Alabama fan, I would want it, but I'd be terrified of it. I'd be terrified but I would want it.
This is where Daniel and I diverge. We all the time, not all, I mean, 95% of the time on this podcast, we have this mind meld going on bets and parlays and predictive stuff like that. But here's where we diverge on this. It's Dan Lanning. If I'm Alabama, my first and only call is to Dan Lanning. And here's why.
What are you going to say when he says, I got plenty of money, I'm doing fine? Bye.
And also when he tells you, hey, that $20 million you want to pay me actually first has to go to the University of Oregon, and then we can talk.
Yeah.
Here, I guess you call up A&M at that point. Be like, hey, I hear you guys hand out money like it's candy. Got any more?
Call up A&M and say, do you still have Jimbo's number? Can we have it? We could do a whole podcast on the funniest Alabama head coaches, and Jimbo Fisher would be at the top of the list.
By the way, right now, Billy Napier is at home looking at his cell phone.
It's not Jimbo Fisher's not at the top of the list. Dan Mullen is at the top of the list. Hey, SEC West head coach experience. That's all I'm trying to say. He knows the stress.
It's Dan Lanning. And here's why it's Dan Lanning. Because it is the anti-Lane Kiffin, essentially. Yes. The reason he's not offensive minded. Okay, you're used to that with Nick Saban. Nick Saban was not offensive minded. He was structure minded. He was hire the right people. That's why he brought in Lane Kiffin, and he almost strangled him many a times on the sideline because it was just oil and water in there.
Yeah, that was back when he had the energy to hire good assistant coaches.
Right. It's Dan Lanning because Dan Lanning is more in the mold of the successful. Now listen to me. You're not going to like this. A lot of college football fans, especially those who think that Mike Bobo is the worst. Look at the coaches that win in college football, the championships.
Sure.
Okay. Jim Harbaugh just won with J.J. McCarthy and a whole gaggle of receivers that have no business being receivers.
Correct.
Defense, run game, trenches.
Yeah.
Jimbo Fisher won when
Mario Cristobal is who you want.
That's who you want. That's who you want. Well, I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury was doing incredible things. He was somebody you want. No. See,
Lincoln Riley.
Great. Ryan Day. I don't know what he does well, by the way. I have no clue.
Well, it does not coach offense. I promise you that.
See, when you look at the recipe in college football, you want system builders, guys who do trenches, run game. And go look at Oregon. You could talk about Oregon's explosive offense. I get that. But Dan Lanning is a trenches and run first guy.
Sure.
Okay. That's why I think it's him. He has the experience. He's shown immediately at the biggest level. He has success.
Yeah.
And he's got SEC
I mean,
time.
listen, it's hard for me to argue. I think Dan Lanning's a great coach. I think he'd be a great hire. I think it would be awesome if Alabama hired a Kirby Smart disciple, somebody from the Kirby Smart coaching tree, to see if we could come in there and replicate the success that Kirby Smart's had. So, I mean, good on you if you're Alabama. Everyone's trying to be Kirby. And so if you can't get Kirby, you might as well get Kirby Jr. Like that would be, I mean, that'd be huge. Could be enormous for your program, honestly. Could get you a championship this decade.
No, I'm sorry. One that does involve multiple games that are not in a COVID year. More when rules are open to
so
everybody.
when the Big Ten plays,
yes,
a full season,
correct,
and everyone's on equal footing. Yeah,
correct.
You could win a championship in the last 6 years.
Correct.
It could be huge for your program. That's all. It'd be great. Alabama off-season dominoes are going to be substantial.
Oh my gosh. Hey, Caleb.
Georgia's going to be impacted. Georgia's going to be impacted.
What's up, bro? How you doing? I'm just saying. I just want to talk.
Do you want to talk?
I do. Yes.
All right. He's Clint. I am Daniel. We are the Locked On Bulldogs podcast, and we will be back with lots more to talk about later this week and next and every other week this off season as we get ready for what's going to be an interesting 2024 season in college football. We'll see you guys later.